WarsawJS.
I don't know if you guys know, but the ICT world, the whole infrastructure and everything emits CO2. And actually the ICT world stands for 4% of greenhouse gas emissions, so it's quite a huge number. And everybody can implement some small activities, can change their behavior at home and just do some small things differently and also at work to just decrease the number of emissions a little bit. So what we do is we have developed an open source linter. And the linter helps in mitigating the carbon emissions of websites. It's completely free to use. You can download it from GitHub and also contribute to our tool. And yeah, Malwina will tell you a little bit more about how it actually works. I'm not a programmer, so if you will have any technical questions afterwards, Malwina is the one to answer them.
Okay, don't be so shy. Kasia actually knows a lot, but I'm happy to give you more details about how the tool works in details. It actually is composed of two tools. One is called ecology, and it's a tool for JavaScript code, JavaScript and TypeScript in future. And the other one is called ecology style, and it's based on styling, which is for CSS and CSS-like languages. And ecology is built on top of ESLint. So it's a tool that I guess all of you use. If not all of you, then probably 99%.
But if you don't use, then I guess the next speaker is from ESLint, so he will talk more about it.
Exactly. And as Kasia said, it's an open source tool, so feel free to start using it. We're more than happy to take your feedback. But the installation and usage is actually very similar to ESLint. So if you use that, then probably you won't have any issues with ecology. What the tool does, it's just linting your code, scanning statically your code, and gives you hints what can be changed in terms of site optimization, mostly size optimization. So what can be done so that the website could be lighter. And if it's lighter, then it emits less CO2.
So maybe to tell you a little bit more about this topic. So actually, I don't know if you knew, but one average website can emit even 216 kilograms of CO2 on an annual basis. And this is more or less like 900 kilometers driven by car. So if you would right now start driving from Warsaw to Budapest and then back from Budapest to Warsaw, so quite a long road. And yeah, as Malwina said, the heavier the website is, the more it emits CO2. So what can we maybe, Malwina, do on a website? Like what kind of rules do we actually develop?
Sure. So there are many things we could start implementing. The most obvious one is related to all resources. So things that makes websites happier. Like, for example, images, videos, fonts, all these static resources that we attach to the website. And obviously, we can start utilizing some lighter formats. Like, for example, for images, we can use WebP, which is much lighter and more optimized than PNG. For videos, we can use WebM. For fonts, we can always attach the font statically to the website and use WOFF2 format, which is very light. So that's for resources. For other things, we can start using caching, rethink all of our calls to external APIs. We can also think about dark mode in our website, or just to make the background of the website darker, so that OLED screens can use less energy. We can also rethink libraries we use. For example, Lodash, a very popular library, can be in 90% replaced by 2 lines of JavaScript code. So it's a very heavy library. By removing it, we can easily save up to, I think, half a gram of CO2 per one view. Yeah. So it's a lot.
Yeah, and if you even, maybe some of you have a website, so if you're wondering how much your website weighs, there are many carbon calculators available online. So you can just go, for example, website carbon calculator, then you enter the first link, for example, and then you see how much does your website weight. And then there are also different tools that would actually analyze your website and tell you what to change. So our tool can be used in the code, so not after you have published the website, but when you are still programming it. So it's quite simpler to use.
Yeah, maybe we could check WarsawJS website. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to do, so please do that. You can also check your websites. Also, some calculators give you ready-to-use hints of what can be optimized. So they are really tools that are off the shelf, and you can just pick them up and very quickly start using. By the way, a very interesting fact about websites is that daily there are more than 250,000 of new websites published. So it really scales up very quickly, and it can be seen as a drop in the ocean, but it actually can make a difference. So we encourage everyone to start using tools like ecology, but also just have somewhere on the back of your mind all the time that the website can be probably produced in a lighter way.
Yeah, and if this didn't convince you yet, then you can also think that your website will just load faster than when it would be heavier. So that's also another benefit to it. And then also your SEO is better. So yeah, like it has many benefits to it.
Yes. So maybe we can pause here for a minute, and I hope you have some questions.
Yeah, sure. If we have a question, we can always raise a hand, and we will bring you the microphone. So yeah.
250,000 new websites every day.
Every day, yes.
That is,
Quite a lot.
impactful information.
This is really interesting thing. Wondering if there is some eco index of the website, like globally, and if it can contribute to the search index, like if we can put more eco-friendly sites further in the search than harder and more heavier ones. If there's any information about it, you know.
So let me rephrase your question and correct me if I understood it correctly or not. So you're asking if there is some measurement, some metric that could tell you if a website is heavy or is eco-friendly, and if you could like see a list of, let's say, the more friendly or less friendly, eco-friendly websites.
Yeah, and some global index can be used by search engines to put good sites upper in the search.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think most of search engines have their algorithms for SEO hidden. So we can't really answer, for example, what's Google algorithm, but definitely they all use page speed, like loading speed of the website as one of components. And if we make our website lighter, then it also loads faster. So it's definitely taken into account. There are also eco-friendly browsers, so probably they used it as one of their algorithms components, but we can't say it for sure. Maybe you would like to add something.
Yeah, maybe you also would like to talk a little bit about how we actually measure the weight of the website, like what kind of methodology do we use?
Yeah, so there are various methodologies, and yeah, we would like to like unify it at some point, but it's very interesting to compare them. You can Google various website calculators and compare their methodologies, their approaches. But the one that is most frequently used is based on the telecommunication step. So how much energy we have to produce to send a website from data center to your end device. And components that are taken into account in the formula are the size of the website, so the like static size of the website, and then end user traffic, which is how much kilowatt hours are consumed for 1 gigabyte of data, and then it's also multiplied by how much CO2 is produced by sending this 1 kilowatt of energy, and usually they take global averages, but it's also interesting to compare how it differs between countries, because for example in Poland we have much higher CO2, but the energy consumption is actually a bit lower. So yeah, there's no one simple answer, I think, on how to calculate the emissions.
And there was somewhere a second question.
Yeah, maybe just to to use my privilege. I wanted to ask you if do you ever try to calculate how much carbon footprint you saved or ecolints saved for the world, because it's a very long project. You are many years over there. So do you have any range of numbers that it can actually how it works, how good it prevents from CO2?
Yeah, it's also a very good question, but it's very hard to measure because as we're open source tool, we can't really see what websites use our tool. We can only say that it's downloaded 10,000 times, so we hope that it's used pretty frequently, but we can't estimate like an exact number. We're also working on use cases to show exact websites. For example, for a Polish conference, Perspektywy Many Tech Summit, maybe you heard about it. Now they will launch a new website and it will be built with ecolint. So
that time we will be able to answer you that question. So yeah, in a month, ping us.
Yes, for this one website, and yeah, that will be like a use case. But we can't really say how many websites use ecolint and what's the impact.
Yeah.
Yes, hello. I have like one main question, but like I could split in two. Like the main question is like, how do you prove that like the data that you provide is like real? Like you refer to like some like major calculations, but like I would like to know a bit in more details. How do you count this? Like for example, what does it mean like site like consumes the amount of CO2? Is it like runtime when like site was opened like by overall the clients, and like is this like their machine time, or is it infrastructure, or like is it just like the weight of your bundle if it's client code? And like the second question also, like how do you prove that like your assumptions about code optimizations are valid? Like you had an example, like you can import Lodash functions or you can write your own. But if you write, for example, in 10 places, like your own Lodash function several times, I don't know, per project, per different teams, like would it like be more beneficial to use library, for example?
Yeah, so very good question. Kasia, would you like to take the first one or I should start?
You should start, but like, yeah, like
Okay.
it's basically like just extended version of what you previously said.
Exactly. So as I said, there are various approaches, but the one that is most popular uses only the step of sending the data. So actually, I think like the adventure of every packet of data in the internet can be divided into three main steps. First is the storage. So how do we store it? Is it optimized? What formats we use? And what data providers. All of the telecommunication system, and then end devices. And it's very, very hard to estimate the first and third step, as you said, and that's totally true. So we only take the second one. So I think we can assume that all of these estimations of carbon footprint provided by each website is always lower than it's in real, because it's only on this one step of the whole story. And as I said, it's based on website size, so only bundle size, let's say, and it doesn't take into account all calls to external APIs, or caching, or for example, things that you can download font each time that a user enters the website. Regarding the interesting point of having some data cached already or revisiting the page, because obviously then we spend less data. It's also included in the formula. So we assume that 98% of data can be cached by a browser, and that 75% of visits are the revisiting users, right?
Yeah, and actually the methodology that we are right now describing, you can Google it by putting in the search engine digital whole grain website carbon calculator, and then you can read more about it. But as Malwina said, like calculating it is really tricky, and we would like to come up with our own methodology that would also cover the other data, like all the questions being sent and so on and so forth. So we are right now trying to reach out to a research group at the university and like try to come up with something like that will cover it all. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I really recommend visiting HTTP archive page. It's an organization, I think I can say it's an organization that measures all websites over the internet, and they every year create annual reports with a lot of data, like what image formats are used, how much data is cached, how many websites use this bundler, for example. And based on that, we took an average, and we came up with the numbers that we just introduced, basing on this, let's say, average websites and metrics.
I have a favor to ask you. Can you repeat both of those websites that you just recommended? Yours was?
Digital whole grain.
digitalhallgrain.com.
Yep. Yes.
Hallgrain, Hallgrain.
Oh God, it was too fast. A little bit too fast. I think.
Hallgrain, Hall.
Yeah, but if you're gonna Google like website carbon calculator, then the first website that will pop is this dark blue website, and then you're gonna just scroll down to the bottom, and then you're gonna find the right name. Yeah.
Okay, you got that, everyone. And what was the website that you recommended?
HTTP archive.
HTTP archive.
Yes, exactly.
.com. I always want to put .com after that. I don't know why.
I'm not sure, but yeah.
It's just me. I have you guys. Thank you for the information so far. That I understand is that apparently lighter websites tend to have lower carbon emissions, tend to cost less. So that's a very interesting thing. Is there any incentive program for people who have lighter, websites to be able to get some sort of reward for that? Just the fact that it's lighter and uses less energy seems to me that there should be some kind of a recompensation for that. We mentioned that part. We mentioned the storage, which can be extremely time-consuming, energy-consuming. However, I don't remember any mention of the satellites. What about the connection? What about the fact that the service, the signal? Certain satellite services, certain providers provide stronger or weaker signals, and how does this affect the energy and carbon emission?
I'm gonna take the first part of the question regarding the incentives. There should be, and everybody of you should get an incentive for a lighter website, but there are not. But there are some websites which would give you this, how to call it, like this batch, that you could add to your website, and you can actually like see the number of CO2 that your website emits, and then you can actually show to your clients, hey, like we have this lighter website, you can look at our website, and that's it. Yeah.
Also, if you use green host providers, so host providers that use renewable energy, you can usually get a badge of 100% of sustainable energy, which is also cool, and you can be proud of it because why not? And about the signal and, let's say, other parts of all ICT infrastructure, it's really hard to estimate, but it all contributes to all of this ICT world. And I think we can't really take it into account in terms of websites only, but as Kasia said, ICT world in general contributes to 4% of all global emissions, so that's a lot. And
I also appreciate that these numbers are very difficult. You mentioned we can assume. I understand this is very difficult and complicated to quantify. So this is where this type of audience has an issue. If I can't count it, if I can't see the statistics, that gentleman back there really wants some kind of assurance that these numbers are real, that there's something that I can lean on. And it's understandable that where we are, that it's thankful that people are thinking about this and looking to make it a better world. I think we have one more question.
Okay, it's actually one question, but first one comment. Because I used to work for a company that was taking care of technical SEO, and what you're talking about is more or less what I did for last year and a half. So optimizing website and using tools like Lighthouse in Chrome DevTools, PageSpeed Insight, and so on, to make a site more compliant with Google guidelines. And as far as I know, Google also shows higher in the results pages that not only provide a good content, but also provide a faster website. So it's other side of solution, problem, I don't know how to name it, but it's like more or less the same, but from the different perspectives. And after this comment comes the question, because when you're talking about optimizing and hardship of finding out how much carbon footprint can be reduced, I'm thinking also about SEO problems, how to show potential client that also that the changes will help him get more traffic, get more money from this traffic, and so on. And how do you think how the business can be convinced that carbon footprint issue is important? Because I know the answer how the business can be convinced that technical SEO is important, but it's all about money. How about carbon footprint? It's like people are afraid of reducing it because less money come from it.
That's a great question, and I will, I think, give it back to our business developer then.
That's a tricky one, right? Like money, it's all about money. Well, we try to think about it that everybody would just like to contribute somehow to the global warming, and if they can do just this simple thing that doesn't really impact the quality of the website, why shouldn't we do it, right? It's not that much time to actually do it, but yeah, like it's a very tricky one. However, nowadays there are more and more reports, and every company, if that's a small company or if that's a large corporate, they will have to report their carbon emissions. So we just hope that it will be included in these reports as well, and they will have a larger overview of their business.
Yeah, also we're talking about websites, but when it comes to data storage and data centers, when a company uses more optimized solutions and maybe just stores less data, then they obviously just pay less for the storage, right? So I think the cost savings aren't that big now to be this main benefit and convincing business partners, but hopefully it will change over time.
Okay, the question from my side, because we're talking about incentives, but what about the possible upcoming legislation from, for example, the EU level? Because there are some CO2 reduction targets on the global level or on the UN Paris Agreement. Do you know if there is any legislation or legislative framework that is coming on that might appear in the near future?
My question. My next question.
Do you mean purely for digital ecology and for websites for servers, or in general?
In general.
Yeah, there are so many. So I already started mentioning that the corporates will have to report their emissions starting from next year, I guess?
Yes. This year for investment banks and investments in general.
Yeah, and then it will move to these middle-sized companies and then to small companies. So in the next, I guess, 10 years, everybody will have to report it. So these are like the most impactful ones right now.
Everyone in EU, of course, because yeah, I think we're the first ones who comes up with such regulations. But also we have friends in like eco industry, also companies that just estimate carbon footprint and helps companies to reduce the carbon footprint. And they said that smaller companies usually really take care of the carbon footprint, and it's not only about regulations and costs, but they just want to do that because they care, and that's great. I think that's the like trend that will flow to other industries too, hopefully.
Yeah, and here we are talking about the profits, like private equity firms, which are smaller, but also in the third sector, so in the non-governmental sector, the foundations usually tend to care a little bit more. Yeah.
Regulation sounds more like restrictions and guardrails, and incentives is something completely other. That means being able to get some payment, some sort of benefit.
You know, there's a saying that it's not about the target, it's about the friends we made along the way. So kind of question in that sphere. So you're developing the product, you're developing this organization, Ecolent, etc. I'm kind of interested in, have you tried to reach out to some larger organizations and maybe they've reached out back to you and supporting you, or maybe you've reached out to some and some rejected you, so maybe you can share something about that experience. and would be interesting to to bring somebody up, like in our view, and at the same time to maybe like push somebody down, like maybe somebody who should have supported this idea and did not, and somebody who you did not expect and actually did.
Oh, that's a good question because yeah, like as Piotr said, like we are developing the tool since a year, I guess. But as it was still just in the pure development phase, we didn't have that many rules, so we didn't feel confident enough to go to a corporate and like tell them, hey, like you can use our tool and so on. So it is just the beginning of us starting to reach out to different companies and so on. Well, what can we share till now? Like for example, the ENG Bank has already wrote something about us, or we are developers was also supporting us, and they shared the information about us in their newsletter. So we have some support, but it is not yet the time for a use case at, let's say, Google. But if you know somebody at Google or somewhere else, we would be very happy to help some website developers to work with their websites.
Yeah, but
know someone else blocks.
we would love to know. Yeah, but just to add on top of it, I think it's not easy. Like in general, startups, as you all probably know, some of them fail, some of them make success, and usually it's the majority of like failures. And it's not like that easy to just go to the company and ask for money or for support. We would wish to have it a bit in a different way, but yeah, we're trying.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, when developing an open source project, it's also quite difficult to get the funding. That you are not a foundation, you are not a profitable startup, so it's quite tricky. But we hope to develop some other products in the future as well that hopefully will get us some profit, and then Ecolint can also develop further.
Malwina and Katarzyna, we thank you very much for your effort and what you're involved in. Can we give them a big hand, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.